So what we're looking at right now is a situation that's, well, it's incredibly tense. We're in Islamabad, Pakistan, where these huge ceasefire talks between the US and Iran are basically falling apart. And the crazy thing is, they haven't even really started yet.
And if you're wondering just how serious this is, get this. The host city, Islamabad, is basically on lockdown. This quote here from Al Jazeera says it all. They've put extraordinary security measures in place. The government actually declared a 2-day holiday. Think about that. They're shutting down parts of the capital, all to make sure these negotiations can happen safely. That tells you everything you need to know about the stakes here.
All right, so let's really paint the picture of what's happening on the ground. The crisis in Islamabad. Okay, so the city's red zone, that's where all the important government buildings are and where these talks are supposed to be. It's completely sealed off. No one in, no one out. And, this is more than just a security precaution. It's like a physical symbol of just how tense things are. You can almost feel the entire city, maybe even the whole region, just holding its breath, waiting to see what happens.
So what are these talks really all about? Why is everyone's attention suddenly focused on this one spot in Pakistan?
Well, you've got three main parties at the table. First, the United States, and they've sent a delegation led by Vice President J.D. Vance. Then you have Iran. Their team is expected any minute. And then, and this is really important, you have Pakistan. They're not just providing the venue, they're playing the crucial role of mediator, trying to get these two sides to actually talk to each other.
The official goal, at least on paper, sounds pretty straightforward. They're trying to find a way to de-escalate this massive conflict that's threatening to boil over in the Middle East. You can think of it as the diplomatic off-ramp, the last chance to avoid a much, much bigger war.
But, and this is a huge but, there's a problem. A really big one. While they might agree on the big picture goal, their understanding of the actual deal they're supposed to be discussing, it's completely different.
And that brings us to the core issue. There's this one fundamental disagreement that has put the whole thing in jeopardy. So what is it? What's the one thing that could blow this whole thing up?
It all boils down to one word: Lebanon. And just look at this comparison. The two sides are on completely different planets. The U.S. is saying, flat out, Lebanon has nothing to do with this. They're saying it was never part of the ceasefire. But then you have Pakistan and Iran saying, quite the contrary. Their understanding was that Lebanon was absolutely part of the deal from the get-go.
So here's what that really means. The U.S. is basically saying that if Israel pauses attacks on Lebanon, it's just a goodwill gesture, a little something extra to help things along. But for Pakistan and Iran, it's not a gesture. They see it as a required part of the deal. It's not a bonus, it's a core term of the agreement they believe they were making. It's the difference between a promise and a suggestion, and that's a huge gap.
When you have a disconnect this big, you have to start asking some serious questions about trust, right? About accountability. So whose credibility is really on the line here?
So while all this is happening, there are still attacks going on in Lebanon, so what does Pakistan think about this? The mediator, the country that stuck its neck out to make this happen? Well, let's hear from someone who knows the inside view.
Wow, okay. This quote from Malia Lodi, a former Pakistani ambassador, is really powerful. She says, it's not Pakistan's credibility that's on the line, it's America's credibility that's on the line. That's incredibly blunt. She's not blaming the mediator, she's pointing the finger directly at the United States.
So why would she say that? Well, according to Ambassador Lodi, it's because the U.S. made a promise. She says American officials gave Pakistan direct assurances that they would restrain Israel, that they would stop any provocative acts, and from where Pakistan is sitting, that promise looks like it's been broken.
So here we are. The very foundation of this whole thing is cracked. Trust is basically shattered, and the main parties haven't even sat down in the same room yet. So what happens next?
Yeah, that really is the million-dollar question, isn't it? Is there even a way forward from here? How can you negotiate a deal when you can't even agree on what you supposedly already agreed on?
Ambassador Lodi points out that there are these competing pressures at play. On one hand, there's a real incentive to keep talking. Both sides have invested a lot to get this far, and just walking away is a big deal. But on the other hand, there's this major concern about what she calls Israel's habitual role as spoiler. So in the end, she argues the ball is really in Washington's court. The pressure's on the U.S. to rein in its ally if they want to save these talks.
What's happening in Islamabad right now is so much bigger than just this one negotiation. It's really a test. Can diplomacy actually work when there's this much mistrust, when both sides have completely different versions of reality? So as the world watches this city in lockdown, the real question isn't just, will this deal work?
It's, can diplomacy itself survive this kind of high-stakes test?